Hello and welcome to another episode of Suddenly Single. I have with me this week the lovely Penny Smith, best known for being a broadcaster on GMTV, but also a radio presenter and an author.
I have written 3 novels which you can probably find in some dusty charity shop somewhere.
I just wanna give, just wanna get out of here.
So before we continue, I'd just like to thank you for watching our channel. We really do appreciate it. But please subscribe by clicking the button and maybe drop us a comment. We really do appreciate all of your feedback and we hope to keep bringing you this great show. Now back to the show. So you are divorced. You've had celebrity boyfriends, including Paul McKenna and Rory Bremner. And you have been in a 20-year relationship with Vince.
24.
24 years. 24 years.
Long time, yeah.
Very long time. But you don't live together full time.
No, we
So
don't.
is that the secret of what is it that you love about being single?
Oh, when I
Part-time.
am single part-time,
Yeah.
is that I'm very happy with my own company. I have the most inordinate amount of hobbies. I look back and I think, do you know what? I think Mum was right when she said, you're always busy. And I am always busy. There's always something I want to do. If it's, I don't know, dyeing clothes, the amount of times that I look in the wardrobe and think, I haven't worn that. Why have I not worn that? Don't like the colour. Go and dye it. Then, of course, I have to hunt around and find other things to dye. So I'm a big dyer. I like making things. I was about to say, did I make this shirt? No, I didn't make this shirt. I did take it in, though.
But I want to ask you 2 questions. One, you are much better at sitting in your own space than I am. And somebody said something quite interesting to me. They said, Siobhan, you get into relationships because you're uncomfortable being on your own because you were almost 50 by the time you were first ever on your own.
Yeah.
And is it better to sit uncomfortable with yourself until you get comfortable with yourself than to keep jumping in where angels fear to tread?
Just going, help, I need help, like Penelope Pitstop. I need another blue. That's a mixed accent there. I was watching I think that was the interview you did with Ingrid Tarrant, because I was watching the one with Tamsin Outhwaite.
Oh, yes.
And I was thinking,
she
said, she was talking about, she kept on using, no, horrified about the idea of ever having another relationship. But she was saying something I thought was very interesting, which she said, at the moment, I'm having a relationship with me.
Yes.
I'm actually trying to find me again.
Yes.
And she goes on retreats. And I definitely would agree with that. I've always been comfortable in my own company, partly because, as I said, there's always something I want to do, need to do, and I am so comfy going to things on my own. I just buy one ticket to the theatre if I...
Do you think that's age, though, and confidence? Because I would do that now.
I think I've always been quite good at being on my own because I'm quite social. And actually... Yeah. When I first came down to London, I was 30, and I knew hardly anybody. My sister was busy with children and everything else. She was the only person I properly knew down in London. And so I started making pacts with myself. I had to say yes to a reasonable invitation.
Okay.
So somebody would invite me. I got invited, for example, there was I think he was an engineer at Sky News, for example, and I was on Sky News, and he invited me for a party on a day when it was my birthday, and I wasn't doing anything. I hadn't planned anything because I didn't know very many people. And he said, "Hey, come to mine for a party. I'm having a party. Come to that." And I, with my say yes head on, went yes, and then I made myself go, even though it involved driving quite a way, and even though I knew I would know precisely nobody apart from him, and I made myself stay for half an hour, and then I enjoyed myself. Obviously, after a few sherbets, I sort of really started enjoying myself, and I've always done that. And some of the time, I've actually ended up making really good friends just because I've gone, I have to stay at least half an hour.
That's a pretty good dating tip, actually. Just say yes.
Just say yes to everything. Have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Always have a backup plan. I drove to that party And
so
then
that you could leave if you wanted to.
And then I left in a taxi, and then the next day phoned the police to say that my car had been stolen because I'd forgotten I drove. Anyway,
it was a very good party.
It was
at that
a really
point.
good party. It really was. I got home at 2, I think. Or maybe it might have even been later. Yeah, then got out and went, "Where's my car?" Completely forgetting I'd driven. But that's because I wanted a backup plan. So right at the beginning, I didn't actually drink.
Yeah.
Then obviously carried on. But yes, I think it is always say yes, and then have a plan where you. And I think there are ways of saying things. I think you can get out. I know that people always say, yeah, but how do you get out of something? And I think honesty or gentle honesty perhaps is the best policy.
Yeah.
But if they don't get it, then maybe brutal honesty, which is that you say, listen, I don't know about you, but it's probably it's more my side than your side because you are lovely. And I think that's the way to say it. You're lovely. I'm an idiot, and for me this is not working, and I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to go.
Do you know what? Not the guy that I'm currently seeing, who's very lovely, but the one before him. I had that conversation. He put the phone down halfway through my prepared chat of how it's not you, it's me.
But don't you?
He just went, okay.
But I quite like that too.
Yeah,
because
I
that's
guess
honesty
that
on
was
his part.
honesty.
That's honesty
That was
on his
honesty.
part. Yeah.
So you know another thing that when you're in your 20s, etc. You and I part company on this, but I wonder if that's partly to do with my liking being in a couple and family and all the rest of it. Is that I was working in America and my first husband, my daughter's dad, followed me out there and said, I don't like you being out here. I don't want you working out here. I want you to come home. And he was actually 6 years younger than me. So I said, this is ridiculous. Stop following me everywhere. I want to get married and I want children. Doesn't even know where it came from. And he said, fine. He was 20. Yes, 20. So all my fault. I hold my hands up. And I married him. And I had the baby that I wanted to have, and I'm delighted that I had her, that she knows all of this story, because she always says, I don't know how you and Dad ever got together. I said, you were meant to be. That's all that was meant to happen.
Yeah, lovely.
But you told me, if you don't mind me saying, that you knew, even in your 20s, that you didn't want to have children.
I knew I didn't want children. But it was extraordinarily difficult in those days.
Because you wouldn't say that, would you?
No.
No.
In those days, if you said you didn't want children, then people would have looked at you like you were the sort of person who was going to go and kick a puppy.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the sort of person you were. What do you mean? You're a woman.
Yes.
You have children.
Yes.
You make a home. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And it does make it extraordinarily difficult because what I would say, you know, that it was sort of slightly circling back past Tamsin Outhwaite, but she was saying, you know, you need to acquaint yourself with you. And I would say you do need to know yourself. And sometimes I think, you know, we're very guilty of going along with the social norms. Yes, I want children, even though, and yes, all I want, you know, I've got friends who say, no, all I want is a nice man, a kind man, a generous-hearted man who's funny. And no, what
funny is important.
Funny is no. Funny is really important.
It
No.
really is.
I'd say all of those things are
Yeah.
important. What they don't add, because of the fact that it, particularly coming from a woman, it's not kind of seen as the done thing, is what they don't add is they need to be really rich. I want them to have a house in the south of France. I want them to be this. I want them to be that. I want them to be, and the list is endless.
Yeah.
And they've got all this list, and they don't say that. And so therefore people proffer up their lovely, lovely friends who are artists or creatives who've got nothing, you know, not a pot to piss in, as they say, and they proffer up these lovely, lovely people, and the girlfriend goes, no, and you're thinking, why are you rejecting these perfectly lovely human beings? And as I said, if they were honest, they'd say, no, I want them to at least have a house or whatever.
Yeah.
But just be honest. Be honest with you.
Be honest with yourself.
Be honest
I
with
think.
yourself.
Yeah.
And then try and be honest with other people as much as you can when it's suitable. I mean, I do feel a bit, you know, perhaps a bit guilty about sort of not saying I didn't really want children, because if you've got somebody who does want children, except that then you do it the other way, and you are honest, and people say. I remember sort of dating. I went through a sort of period of I just wanted to have fun, and I went through this period of I was just a bit. It was one of those things where, for some reason, I think I might have been that age, when blokes are starting to go, I think I want to get married and settle down. And I kept on saying, I'd go out with this person and then we'd sort of, there'd be a connection and a bond. And I'd go, by the way, I do not want to get married. I do not want children. And all of a sudden, it was all they wanted. All they wanted was to get married and have children. And then I think...
That's psychological.
Psychological. And I think, am I doing
defo.
this wrong? Should I say, I want to get married and have children? So I tried that. And then immediately they went, so do I. And I thought, this is really not... What are you supposed to say? So I don't know.
To be honest. But you told me a lovely story about your parents. You said they laughed every day
all
until
the
your
time.
dad died.
Yes, Dad died 10 years ago now. And Mum and Dad had a relationship that had a lot of laughter. They were silly in a good way.
Yeah.
They were still, they went to live in Cyprus for my dad's health, and they had a pool. And I should never forget, there I was having my coffee. They didn't see me. I was having my coffee on the balcony. And I saw Mum and Dad were just going and having a look at various things around the property that they needed to do. There was a bit of planting they needed going on. Dad had a coffee. And Mum just nudged him into the pool. And then, and then they both laughed like a drain, and then he got out. And then he just said, it's no worries or anything. And he turned to go and obviously pushed her in the pool. And then, there was always fun going on. They were they laughed a lot. I mean, it's not to say they didn't have rows and everything else, but there was a lot of laughter.
So your
and they
example
were very
as a child was a very happy, very harmonious...
very happy, There was Dad mending things when he was forced to. Mum loved being a homemaker. She loved having children. She loved making things at the home. She didn't like the fact that I was obsessively tidy. She didn't like that at all. I remember when I was cooking and I was about 9, I think, and there I was busy making coconut pyramids, and she left me to my own devices. Many years later, we were sharing a bottle of wine, and I said, "Do you know what, Mum? I loved the fact that you always left me in the kitchen on my own when I was so young." And she said, I felt quite grown up, and she said, "Oh." So she said it was just the fact that it was so. She said, it was so utterly joyless the way you cooked.
Why?
You never made a mess. You'd empty a bag of flipping desiccated coconut and trot over to the bin and put the packet in the bin, and next you'd get the condensed milk out and then go and put the tin in the bin and then go and stir, and everything was all tidy and it was all wiped down all the time, and just drove me insane. I went, "Oh, thanks, Mum. Thanks for that."
I think I need to be friends with your mum. She's going to do a wing walk at 90 years old, isn't she?
Every year she likes to raise money for charity. Ever since Dad died, she's decided, right, every year I'm going to do something. So she goes and does something, raises money for charity. And she's decided she wants to do a wing walk, so she's just investigating at the moment, yeah.
That is fantastic. Another nice thing that you said to me, and I think it's very true, is that grief lets you know who your real friends are, because
goodness,
you also lost
you?
your brother, didn't you?
Yeah, Steve died 15 years ago.
God, where does
coming
time
up to
go?
15 years. I don't like that. It was a surprise. He'd had a lot of accidents and things going wrong in his life. I mean, mostly because he used to, run up Kilimanjaro, that sort of thing, on his birthday, and water skied over.
What about your family and having to move all the time, ants in your pants?
We're just busy.
Yeah.
And he'd water skied over a crocodile's nose in his last email to me on his way up to Timbuktu in Mali. And so he was always busy, always doing things, and he'd survived a motorbike crash when he was 18, given a 2% chance of survival. He'd had cerebral malaria, he had this, he'd had that, because he lived in Africa. And so loads of things had happened to him. And so we fully expected him to pull through. Okay, so it was an induced coma he was in, but nevertheless we kind of went, yeah, he'll pull through. So it was a complete surprise to all of us when he didn't. And total shock, utter grief. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I went straight into the angry phase. I wanted to be mugged so I could turn around and actually, I'm
Bash
sorry, but I
someone.
wanted to thump somebody, and because they were a baddie alive in a world when my brother was not alive. And it was, and my girlfriends were, and it was, I think, uniquely girlfriends. There probably were some male friends. I'm sorry if I'm sort of, misremembering this. Recollections may differ. Love that quote. Thank you, Queen. And girlfriends were great because they didn't mind when I'd be having a discussion and we'd be not even talking about anything remotely about Steve or him or his work, or there was no connection, and I'd suddenly fall apart. Now, you do know who your friends are. And I tell you what also happened then is that I did actually have a look at my address book and just go, if this happened to me, as in with what happened to Steve, if this happened to me, would I want my last meal to have been with somebody who I'm not 100% kind of, on board with, type thing, So either them or their partners or their energy or whatever else. And I just thought, no, I don't.
No.
So whilst they're still, I would count them as they moved from that. I was talking about the central sphere, the core people. They just sort of slightly moved away, and I don't. It sort of sounds a bit brutal, but genuinely, I just think that, you do want radiators in your life and not, what's the other one? Vacuum cleaners? What is it called? There's
vacuums.
Radiators radiating heat, and then there's the people who suck all the joy out of you. And they might be really interesting and fun and all the rest of it, but they're sort of... Is it Hoovers? I don't know.
Hoovers?
I don't know. What is the other one if you haven't got radiators?
Yeah.
They give there are people who kind of give, and it's great. I mean, you mentioned Mariella Frostrup as being one of my great friends.
Yeah, she is.
And I can sometimes...
I'm telling you that.
Yeah. Yes, she is, Siobhan. You're so right.
Hello, Mariella.
And the thing is that sometimes we don't talk for months.
Yeah.
And see each other for months.
Yeah.
And then, I know if something happened right now,
You could ring Mariella.
and she would step up to the plate.
Yeah.
Every time.
You did a lot of
Backpacking
with her.
Oh, we are so comfy and attend. We've had our massive rows. We had a
That's a good friend.
huge row. That is a good friend who gets over the row. Yes, and also because I once did something terrible, and she called me out on it. And no, it was good because she called me out on it.
No, I was going to say, will you tell us what you did or no?
No, I'm not going to tell you what I did, but she called me out on it. And this is another sign of a good friend, is that rather than saying, a year later, by the way, I'm no longer going to be your friend because of that thing that you did then, instead of doing that, you phone your friend and you say, by the way, you didn't do this. Why not? And to explain, because everybody is different. I mean, I always think that saying to somebody what's wrong and them saying nothing is actually quite difficult and annoying, because how are you supposed to put whatever it is right? But it's very difficult, particularly if it's something that is an inherent part of them. I'm fanatically tidy. I cannot leave the building I cannot leave my home in a state. I can't. It's not in my nature.
Okay.
I cannot. If somebody says, I mean, obviously, if there was an emergency, I would. But if you're saying we need to leave right now, I will say I cannot. There is washing up and drying.
Is that bad?
There is washing up and drying up to be done.
I was going to ask you that question.
There are things.
I can leave the washing up all night.
Again, if somebody said to me, we're leaving in 5 minutes, I'd say, we are not, or you can, but I can't, because that's me. And so therefore, when we come back to a relationship with somebody, it's very difficult to say what is wrong with something if it's an intrinsic part of their nature. So if you were saying what's wrong, and it's about me unable to leave the house because of the fact that I can't put it, then that's kind of mean, because I can't stop myself. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be comfortable. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Your house is burning down and you could still got to finish washing up. Come on.
No, if the house, that's what I said. If it's an emergency, emergency is one thing.
Okay.
Emergency.
Okay.
Emergency. Somebody, there's a small puppy outside that needs to be rescued. I'd leave everything, rescue puppy, go back in. That's fine.
Okay.
There we go. That is an emergency. Poor little puppy. But anything else, I think that you have... So sometimes when you say, what's wrong? And if it's about something that's an intrinsic part of them, I think it's still... I think you still would have to say something, which is, sorry, I just find that so irritating about the tidiness, but I know it's an intrinsic part of your personality and I just got to get over myself, but it's just really annoying right now because I want to go and do this.
I'm
I think
going
that's
to
fine.
bring in someone to talk to you in a minute. Calm the situation down.
To give me a stern
down.
talking to. I get very frustrated now. I'm worried about them washing up.
However, before we do that, one final question. Do you believe in the one?
Oh no.
No. You think
No.
there are lots of the
I think there
ones?
are. I think there are.
You
lots
can make
of
it
the
work
ones.
with a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah. No, I've loved many times. Oh no, and there
Well,
is.
that's nice to say.
Yeah,
you've
I've loved many times, and that is, I think.
That's big-hearted.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well, I
that
think.
is.
But surely, why would you have a proper relationship with somebody without?
I don't know, Penny Smith. Do you want to get a psychiatrist for me? Because I've certainly dated people for years that I've known from day one it's not going to work out.
But have you always been searching for the one?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I haven't occasionally thought I found the one. So I suppose on those occasions I've thought I was in love, yes.
Yes, as I said, I think
Yeah.
I've been in love multiple times. I mean, I would be the perfect person to actually imagine that there's the one because I love opera
Yeah.
and that's always big passions.
Yeah.
I loved fairy stories growing up and they always lived happily ever after with just the one.
Yeah.
Although they did own a castle.
But it always did stop at, and they lived happily,
Happily ever after, yes.
after.
And they never, ever had an issue about one of them never brushing their teeth or always brushing their teeth and leaving the toothbrush on the side. Why would you do that?
Oh,
Why
no,
do
no,
people
we're
leave
back
those
to your
things in?
OCD issue here.
It's not OCD. 100% it's not OCD. Honestly, it's not OCD. It's
It's
a
just
horrible,
cleaning,
horrible
okay.
condition.
Okay.
It's no. I'm just saying that it's fanatically tidy.
Fanatically
tidy.
okay.
I do accept I am
Okay,
fanatically
we're going to
tidy.
leave it there, and I'm going to bring in an expert.
Sort of getting a bit
to help
panicky about
calm
the
you
mess.
Yeah, I'm coming up.
We're back with Jeanette Miller, self-image transformation coach.
Hello.
Jeanette,
Yes.
do you want to explain to us what a self-image transformation coach means?
Yes.
And what, if anything, you can do for our very confident, very happy in her own skin Penny here?
Well, probably nothing because she seems to be doing okay.
Thanks. No, I'm sure I probably need tidy. I think I probably need a good old tidy round, actually.
Oh,
no, not tidying. No, not mentioning the
that's
tidying.
what you could help her with,
Yeah.
the tidy issue.
Well, I think when it comes to self-image, it really is about how we feel about ourselves inside as opposed to the external image that we all focus on so much. And when I'm coaching women, it's really about helping them to ditch the self-doubt, see themselves differently and, get rid of all those stories that we've been telling ourselves since we're probably at school.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not sexy enough, I'm never going to find a man. That sort of thing.
This is a really interesting one because God loved my mother, and she never watches, but if she was watching, we talk about this now. She told me quite openly I was her plainest and fattest child.
Oh, yeah.
Quite
Nice.
openly. And, now obviously she forgets all of that. But I do think that self-doubt can be planted
Definitely.
100%.
in the home.
100%.
Definitely.
In the home.
Definitely.
And I know that I'm not.
No.
I mean, I might be the plainest and fattest of her children. So I don't think I'm the plainest and fattest child in the world.
No.
But in my head,
Yes.
I've always thought that my brother is the most intelligent, good-looking, everything my mother told us that he was.
Yes.
And my sister said to me, if she's watching, she'll laugh, how did Mum even have 3 children? And I said, because she had us first. She was just waiting for the son and heir. So thank God he was lost. Because if he'd have been first, we probably wouldn't even exist.
Or she wouldn't have noticed you.
Or she wouldn't have noticed
No.
us
Except as
at all.
No.
Yeah.
Those
yeah.
stories are definitely planted from when we're younger. And I think our
Yes.
parents of a certain age, they didn't really have any filter. It's not like
they
now.
didn't. They didn't.
You know,
It was very blunt.
Very, and we're sort of
yeah.
we're telling them now what not to say.
Yeah.
But back then, they didn't know that it was the wrong thing to say. I mean, there's lots of stories. I mean, I was, called fat. I couldn't do ballet because I was too fat. That was a family member that said that to me, and I believed it. And I begged my mum, please don't send me back to ballet.
Yeah.
Do you know, also, Richard Blackwood was a guest on
Yes.
here. And he said to me, he once said to his dad, "You never told me you loved me." And he went, "There was food on the table, wasn't there?"
Oh,
I just think it was
I
a
know.
different generation.
It was.
But also,
not
we
in your
didn't do-
house by the sounds
No,
of
no,
it.
no. But I tell you what, we didn't go round. We didn't go round telling each other we loved them. We were not. We
No.
weren't like the American. I mean, you watch American films
Yes,
or sitcoms,
and they do.
love you, mom, love you, dad.
That's not
Nobody,
British. No.
nobody did
No.
anything like that.
No.
But it was just assumed that everybody kind
but
of
then
pretty much loved.
we make up
everybody.
for it now. I think. I certainly do.
I think
I
our
tell my
kids
children,
have a
yes.
different. Honestly, my parents, I knew they loved me. Of
Yeah.
course they did. And my dad died 18 years ago. They
Yeah.
never once said it.
No,
Not once.
no.
And weirdly, what you've just said, we went to America to stay with my aunt, and my cousin's going, "Love you, Mum, love you for making me Irish." And I looked at my mum, and my mum went, and I went, "Oh, please don't start saying it now." I mean, really.
Yeah, I'm coming up.
Right, so Suddenly Single Honesty Box.
Oh.
This has got questions in it. Now, we
Okay.
don't leave each other hanging.
No, we don't.
We all get a question. If
Okay.
you really don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But they're
Okay.
not very difficult.
No.
Take one. Take one. Right. Penny, you go first.
Have you ever used an app?
Dating app.
Oh, a dating app. Sorry, I was going to say, have I ever used an app? City Mapper, my favourite app, obviously. Tidily getting from one place to another.
It's not going to get you a date, though, is it?
No,
That
it
is what
isn't.
this show's
No,
about.
I haven't, and I've got
Would
lots
you?
of... Would I use an app? All the people I know who've used apps have had at least one horrible ghosting experience, have had at least one instance, I mean, obviously I'm of a certain age, have had at least one experience where they've ended up wasting an evening, at least one evening, with somebody whose profile picture was taken probably, when they were 20 and they're now many decades later. I've quite a lot of people. I think I'd probably be more likely to go to a dating site. I don't like the idea of people swiping just on the way that people look.
You've got to start
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yes,
And
but
there
I think I
there's
would
nowhere
force
to go
myself.
anywhere.
Well, except that they're. I mean,
The gym.
has one exhausted all one's friends' friends? Is what I would say. Because listen, I recently played Cupid because there I was with the girlfriend, having a chat, and she said, "I haven't given up on love and everything else." And I went, "Oh my goodness! By the way, I've just met this really good bloke who might be, you might quite fancy." Said, "Oh, here they are," and they've been together since last November. And it's all going very well, thank you very much. So that's what I mean about sometimes you just have to remind yourself that there are other people out there. I've got another friend who's just sort of clocked up that in real life, that all the successful ones, it seems to me, are in real life because it's very hard. Look at you, apart from you. Because I think it's very hard to just look at something. I mean, I look at if I look at the people I've dated, would I, if I looked at just at their faces and not their personalities, would I have swiped whichever way it is that you do the yesy one bit? Because actually, I don't care kind of pretty much what they look like as long as they're funny, interesting, and they've got lots of things to do.
You can tell if they've got something about them by their bio. Yes, a lot of them are a waste of a night, but sitting in on your own is a bit of a waste of a night
No,
as
it isn't,
well.
because then you can go and there's always a cupboard to tidy. Can I just say to them? Really, there always is. There's always a cupboard you can get through. That put stuff on Vinted, go and kind of tidy around. Oh, there's always some. Yeah. What about that box with all the wires in that you don't know what they are?
Well, I would say where there's life, there's hope. I've been on a dating app.
Okay.
It's taken me many a year.
Okay.
Been on and off them many a date. This one I'm hopeful for, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
Ever used a dating app?
Yes, I have, and I like them.
Oh,
Thank
do
you.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're really useful.
Right.
I mean,
to
you
sort
meet
of-
people
Are
that
you
you
with
would
somebody
never
now?
meet.
No.
But you see, that's what I mean. I know so many people. Yeah, I really like the dating apps. Have you got any? No. So I suppose it's just a night out, is it? Is it just a night out?
Well, no. I mean, I have met, men on them and had a relationship, but it hasn't worked out. But I would have thought it wouldn't have worked out anyway, even if I've met them in
Yeah.
person.
I just think flirt with everybody. Flirt with everybody.
Go for it.
Yeah, just to flirt with everybody, no matter where they are. I flirted
Okay.
with somebody on my phone wasn't working the other day. I flirted with somebody. I know I am, yes, obviously in a relationship, but nevertheless, not a worry. I
That
thought,
seems fine.
yeah, exactly.
So this is more for you, really.
How is it?
How important is the love of classical music and the theatre in a
For
partner?
me, well, interestingly, if you'd have asked me many, many years ago, I'd have said, oh, no, that's really way down. But if you're in a relationship with somebody and they don't like the music that you like at all, as was the case, and they don't like the theatre at all, and they hate opera with a passion, it's actually incredibly hard, because it means that at any stage you can't have, as you're pottering about, you can't have the music that you want, for example, as you're trotting about. So you have to compromise.
That's true, actually.
You have to compromise on music, and
I'm going to have that conversation later. About compromising on music.
really, is there a compromise to be
Is there-
made?
yes, is there one
It
to be
is.
made?
It is very difficult, because I couldn't cope with somebody who just wanted to listen to, I don't know, heavy metal and hardcore rap or whatever it is, or those sort of, those relentless sort of beats that do my head in.
So my question is, what is the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for you?
Ooh.
Do you know the answer?
Wow.
You're looking at Penny.
I know, I'm looking at Penny thinking,
I'm
does
thinking,
Penny
have
know?
I
Because
done-
I'm like,
Well,
it's been so long, I can't remember.
The weird thing is that, to me, romance, I suppose, romance, obviously, I love romantic films and that sort of thing, and I'm a sucker for all that romantic stuff. But on the other hand, for me, it would always be something that I wanted, as opposed to... if I thought that the
Rubber
romantic...
gloves.
Okay,
Marigolds.
no, here's the scenario, right? So if the romantic gesture was breakfast in bed with a rose and everything else, but I knew that I was going to go down and the kitchen was going to look like a bomb had hit it, that to me is a non-romantic gesture, because I'm too stressed to eat whatever it is. And I agree it is my fault, it is my problem, but at the same time, anybody who knows me well should know that the romantic gesture would actually probably be better if it was going out to have breakfast. If they're messy in the kitchen.
Okay.
Unless they're tidy in the kitchen, in which case not
Right.
a problem. Do you
Okay.
see what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So romantic can't just be
Okay.
the gesture where it's, here it is, the result,
yeah.
because it will stress me out. And yes, the difference would be if it was a child, I'd think it was just adorable that they'd made well, would I think it was adorable they'd made a mess? Yes, I would. I would think it was adorable that they'd made the effort to go and do this, even though things were broken and all the rest of it. It would be fine, because
I
I...
decided they're breaking things.
Yes, I've taken it on a step. I've decided these are very clumsy children.
Have you thought of one yet?
Yeah. So I did have to think for a bit, to be honest. It did take a while to think about it. So my son's 28.
Oh, same age as my daughter.
Right. So
Oh,
going
are
back,
they in a relationship?
No.
Well, not yet.
going back a bit. So when I was very heavily pregnant with him, like I think he was nearly 9 pounds. He was just huge.
What?
And,
Are you all right?
just
You
still,
got over
still
it?
getting over it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Do you
Still-
not?
I know.
God, right,
I'm
every
still
time
getting over
my
it.
goodness, every time you look at him, do you not think you broke?
Well, yeah, like this, looking up at him. Yeah, I was like, oh my
okay.
God, that's
No, he's
why.
fine.
So when I thought that I couldn't, well, the midwife said, you're on bed rest. But his dad did take me out, did surprise me. I had a new dress, had a pair of shoes, took me to a really nice restaurant, and I think he bought me a bag or a coat or something.
Nice.
And I found that was really romantic
That
because
is
I
romantic.
was heavily pregnant, feeling really ugly and just big and
Yeah.
everything. And that was something I always remember.
Yeah.
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 What about you then?
Okay, I'm going to top it.
Go
Oh,
for
right.
it. Go on.
So after I'd been dumped, and was devastated.
Which one?
The second one, the
second one.
17-year one that I was not expecting, and I was on the floor. Got picked up by this really nice French guy, and I had been seeing him for a few months, and I was in such a state I couldn't even have told you what he looked like if I was really honest. I just kept going out with him because he kept asking, and I thought, what else am I doing? He went to see my mother, and he said, because my daughter at the time she wasn't a baby, but what would she have been, 17? And there's only me and her.
That's not even remotely a baby, by the way. Just
no, but
saying
I wouldn't
that.
have left her in the house on her own for Christmas.
At 17?
No. Would you leave your child at 17 in the house on their own for
I
Christmas and New
was
Year?
I was abroad sort of getting jobs at 17. My sister left home at 16. Goodness sake, I was babysitting from the age of 12.
My baby, I would not have
Anyway,
left
okay.
at home on her own at 17. And he went to see my mother, unbeknownst to me, and said, I would like to take her on holiday, but you have to have your granddaughter. To which my mum said, OK, because my mum knew I was in a state.
Okay.
And we flew to Miami.
That's so sweet.
And he
This is
rented
romantic.
a yacht.
Oh, for
That's
goodness sake,
lovely.
this is super romantic.
Yes, it was. And we spent New Year's Eve having dinner on a yacht. And he asked me to marry him. And I said no. Which wasn't probably the right answer. But it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done. Yes.
That is a
That is-
lovely
And I am still
romantic
friends with
thing.
him. And he is still a marvellous, wonderful man.
And is he single?
He's still single, yes.
So, you know when you said about friends of yours who
Yes.
haven't got him, have you introduced him to your friends? You know,
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
talking about...
yes, but yes, we'll take this off. We'll take this off
Offline,
screen. We'll take this
okay.
offline. Yes.
Okay.
But that was one of the most romantic things ever, really. And I look back and I still say to him, I do thank him for that, because I was on the edge.
Okay.
And actually, what would have been the worst New Year's Eve of my life turned out to be the best New Year's Eve of my life.
That's
And how did you
amazing.
meet him?
Well, this is going to make me sound super posh, which I'm not. He said, I recognise you from Polo. and I know
this
you
was
don't
on
know
so this
who
was
I
on a
am.
dating app then?
No. It was in the Tate Gallery. And he said, I
Was it
recognise...
in real life?
This was in real life.
IRL.
I was talking
Ah.
to a girlfriend and he paid for my lunch. And he said, I know you don't recognise me, but I recognise you from Polo. And I would just suggest that he was always punching above his average. And can I buy you dinner sometime?
That is lovely.
And that was lovely. It was lovely.
Nice.
Yes.
You see, so I think there is... So
there are nice men in the world.
And also,
there are very nice men in the
come
world.
back to that point about make sure that that you flirt with everybody as you're going along, just in case you need them on the way back.
Well, that's it. Yes.
There we go.
Yes, he's still my very good friend. Yes.
That is
Love
lovely.
that.
So thank you, Penny Smith, for coming in
Oh,
to
thank
Suddenly
you.
Think Single. Thank you, Jeanette,
Thank you.
for your advice. Please come back and see you next week, everybody.